Perfect. Well, hello everyone, and thank you all for joining us today. We have been in office for a little over 6 months, but we wanted to do this update session just to let you all know what we're working on, what we have worked on, in the spirit of transparency, and what your tax dollars are getting out of our office. So every week on our social channels, we have been sharing with you all updates to the public. I don't know if any of you have seen those videos, but we've been giving you weekly updates as well, what we're working on. And pretty much, this is going to be a culmination of the past 6 months. And especially in the face of continuing indictments in the City Hall, we feel that it is especially crucial that our office is making progress on transparency and accountability. Now, we've released several reports, reviews, and tools like maps and data charts, which we'll get into this meeting, and we're working on many more, which we'll also share later today. But I want everyone to know that we are doing the best we can to complete as much work as possible, as quickly as possible with the resources we have. We have close to 50,000 city employees, including proprietary departments, and the Controller's Office has, around 150 employees. So we're doing our best to provide transparency and accountability on our tax dollars. But as you may know or not know, we do not control our office's budget. The mayor and the city council do. And we wish we could do all the audits and the vendors, all 51,000 active vendors as fast as we can. But in reality, we are limited on what we can do. But we are trying our best to work very hard. So this week alone, we will be releasing 2 resources. A map showing locations and details of 4118 arrests, which are arrests under LA's anti-camping law, and an updated map of affordable housing locations with city covenants, which we released last night. We hope that everyone can check it out. Share it to somebody who needs to find low-income housing, and use the instructions on the website to find housing for those who are trying to find those low-income units, because many of these covenants include low-income units in these nice luxury apartment buildings now. So without further ado, let's get started with our Chief of Accountability and Oversight, Sergio Perez.
Hi, good morning, folks. My name is Sergio Perez. As Kenneth said, I serve as the Chief of Accountability and Oversight here at the Controller's Office. I was previously the Inspector General for the LADWP, and before that, here at the city, I served as the Director of Enforcement for the Ethics Commission. Kenneth has really built up an executive team that brings a lot of expertise and experience to the table. You'll be hearing from the Greater Accountability and Oversight team today. They'll be highlighting both our executive office efforts and the efforts of our civil service staff. Those efforts include monitoring city work on the ground and in person, which is part of the gold standard of oversight practices across the country. And the operations we've been monitoring include the Care and Care Plus actions of LA Sanitation Department, the operations of our animal shelters. We've also participated as observers in housing inspections and reviewed conditions at interim housing sites. Couple of months ago, we were also observing LAPD operations in response to public demonstrations that were taking place at that time. Our work is always informed by the needs of LA residents across the city, and we've been staying in constant contact, not only with stakeholders and community organizers, but with members of the community who want to know more about the Controller's Office and the work that we're doing. Those conversations have included community listening sessions in Council Districts 10, 6, and 15, and that's just the beginning. We're going to make sure that we set up shop, so to speak, in every council district in the city, so that we can both explain our work and benefit from the ideas and needs of city residents throughout. You're going to be hearing from 3 other members of the Accountability and Oversight team. First from Dinah Manning, then from Ashley Bennett, And finally, from Vincent De Vera. Dinah Manning will be describing our public safety work. Dinah?
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. As Sergio mentioned, I'm Dinah Manning, the Director of Public Safety here at the Controller's Office. Previously, I had been a career public defender, both at the local and federal level. So I bring that experience and my dealings with law enforcement and withholding public safety and law enforcement entities to their constitutional burdens, so on and so forth. So we have, as you can tell from the slide, I didn't hide the ball. I didn't make it a transitional slide. You're seeing all that we've been working on over the last 6 months. So one is that we have a team that has been assessing LAPD helicopters to bring transparency and accountability to both their cost and performance. So you'll be seeing the results of that assessment this year fairly soon, so be on the lookout. Our team has also been working to analyze the progress that Los Angeles has made in the unarmed response space. We're looking at efforts both within LAPD and outside of LAPD. And we know that there's a lot of noise and a lot of voices in that space right now. So we're trying to make sure that we can bring you an analysis of that progress within our wonderful city. We have made public an analysis of the costs of LAPD presence, both at city council meetings and at the January demonstrations over Tyre Nichols' murder at the hands of police. So you've seen that rolled out. What we're working on right now is creating a map of LAPD stops from 2022. This is something that we also did during the campaign using 2021 LAPD stop data. What we're going to be showing you with this new iteration is areas where LAPD stops occur the most, stops by race, and provide an analysis on the types of stops, including the actions taken during the stop and the end result of the stop. So be on the lookout for that. We're also working on creating another map, which will be of LAPD arrests from 2022. It will show a whole host of information, as you can tell from the maps that we create, where LAPD arrests occur the most, stops by race, council district, LAPD division, and a description of the types of arrests that are happening, from everything including misdemeanors, infractions, felonies, and other subsets of arrests. So be on the lookout for that as well. That's just a small dose of what we've been doing over the last 6 months, and be expecting to see more projects from us this year and in the coming year. So anything that you want to see in the public safety space, I think you know how to contact us, but emailing me is very easy, and we take resident input very seriously because we're here to support you and to represent you and your interests. So thank you very much. It's been an honor being part of this team, and I'm looking forward to the work we'll get done.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Bennett. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Homelessness here at the Controller's Office. And I'm coming into this position from many years of experience with working with unhoused community members on the ground and walking with them on their journey from being on the streets to interim housing to permanent housing. So I'm excited to share with you a little bit of the work that we've been doing in the homelessness space. So as it stands right now, we have 2 ongoing audits with LASA. The first one is on interim housing data. So there's a lot of missing information in the interim housing world about what resources are available at any given time and how people access those resources. So for this audit, we're seeking to answer questions including how complete are shelter bed locations and availability numbers? For providers helping unsheltered people find placements, what info do they lack and what do they need more of? What issues hinder collecting and sharing better data on bed availability? And what's needed to make up-to-date interim housing data possible, because there's not a centralized database that shows where all the beds in the city are available and what it takes to gain access to those beds at this point in time. We also have our Pathways to Permanent Housing audit going on right now, and permanent housing is the most important piece of the puzzle when it comes to serving unhoused communities. So we want to evaluate what's happening in this realm. Some questions that we're hoping to answer through this audit are: which interim housing pathways help people transition into permanent housing most often? Is there a program or a type of housing that's feeding people into the permanent solution more often than others? If so, we want to identify that and amplify that. What are the primary pathways to permanent housing? Which ones are being utilized the most often? Is it vouchers? Is it time-limited subsidies? Is it permanent supportive housing and just entry into those programs through the system? Are people who have been able to get housing vouchers actually able to move into the housing that they seek with those vouchers? And if they are not, what are the barriers to that success? What's the data on time-limited subsidy programs like rapid rehousing and recovery rehousing? What are the barriers to transitioning people into permanent housing? And what are the city costs for each type of pathway? Also, simultaneously with our interim housing audit, we are currently working on developing our own interim housing and bed availability map. So we've been plotting all of the interim housing and shelter options throughout the city and trying to get into contact with people at those individual sites. And ultimately, the goal with this is to provide real-time data on bed availability and also what it takes to gain access to those resources. So there's a list of things that a person who's unhoused has to do to get access to a specific bed, whether it be being entered in a CES system, be living within a certain catchment area. We really want to highlight those parameters for getting into certain resources and make that available to the general public and folks who are seeking those resources. We're also working on a homelessness cost analysis. We want to evaluate the full costs that are incurred when individuals stay on the streets and are cycling through shelters, and what all those costs are going towards. So for this fiscal year, we're really hoping to highlight exactly where all the money is going. So stay tuned for more on that. We've also already released a map of unhoused deaths, and you can gain access to that map on our social media. We are also, we've embarked in the last few months on a landlord outreach project. We've been doing outreach, cold calling landlords across the city and just having very candid conversations about whether or not they'd be willing to rent to people who are unhoused and using vouchers or time-limited subsidies. It's a lot of the barriers that people encounter when they're trying to apply into housing with vouchers and subsidies or credit checks and background checks. Not everyone can pass those. So just trying to help our providers in identifying landlords that are more willing to work with the populations that we need to serve has been a high priority for our office. Also, as Sergio mentioned, we've been doing on-the-ground observations. We're doing a Care and Care Plus review currently. LA Sanitation receives the highest departmental allotment and the fourth highest overall allotment of funding in the homelessness budget. And a majority of that funding goes to Care and Care Plus. So we've begun doing a cost analysis of those operations and are also observing them on the ground. And we'll continue to share more on that as it develops. And also, as Kenneth mentioned, this week we'll be releasing a 4118 map that will highlight all of the arrests that have been done because of 4118, the no sitting, sleeping, or lying in certain zones of the city, and kind of break that down in different demographical terms for you all. So that's all we have going on in the homelessness space right now. We'll keep you posted. Really appreciate you all for being here this morning, and I will go ahead and pass it on.
Thank you, Ashley. And one thing I also want to mention too, that our financial analysis and reporting team are working on and our accounting operations is showing how much we're spending on homelessness in relation to the upcoming $1.3 billion homelessness budget. So be on the lookout for that as well. I'll pass it on to Vincent Rivera, our Director of Special Projects.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Vincent Rivera, Director of Special Projects for the Controller's Office. A bit of my background is I was an auditor for 4 years in the private sector, and I also currently volunteer for LAAS, particularly at West Valley Shelter. But first, I'd like to start with our housing. So currently, we're working on transparency and oversight over the housing department with a focus on tenant issues and affordable housing, especially the preservation of it. We've updated our affordable housing covenant map, which you can see on the right-hand side, and you can access it on the link housingcovenants.lacontroller.io, but it's also shared in the chat. And we've also attended housing inspections just to understand like on the ground what's done during these housing inspections, either through SCEP, which is the normal like 4-year inspections for apartment buildings, or also if complaints are put in by tenants, what the housing department does during these inspections and how they're resolved. We've also been meeting with tenants just to hear their experiences with the housing department, if they ever done complaints, especially with regard to the tenant anti-harassment ordinance. Because as of right now, the city has referred 0 cases for litigation or prosecution. And also we've met with LA Housing Department management just to understand better their processes and also how their department is operating. And then onto animal welfare. So back in March, we released our transparency report on LA Animal Services. And even after the report, we are still looking at the department. So we've released a spay and neuter map, which shows locations where residents can get discounted or free spay and neuter. And also there was a billboard that was put up to promote adopting and fostering, especially during this crisis where there are more animals coming in than are being adopted out. And we've also set up a website with the LA Animal Services transparency chart. So we created this website just to visualize, it's basically a visual wolf stats, but we've also included other information like reasons why animals are being surrendered or days since a dog has been last walked. So it's just for the public to better visually understand these trends and also find other trends in animal welfare. And that's it.
Perfect, and thank you, Vincent. And I hope people could check out the website on LA Animal Services charts that we put down there. We update it monthly, and we also, like Vincent said, include information on statistics that are not included in the department's monthly book stats reports, such as the reasons why dogs were surrendered, or sorry, dogs or cats or other, and also the number of days since a dog was last walked, and also showing the comparison of the animal population with the amount of kennels that we have. And as Vincent said it, and as before we took office, we are putting a heavy emphasis as well on trying to help what's happening in our animal shelters, because it is overcrowded and they need a lot of help. And there are only 6 running animal shelters right now. But what if you didn't know is that there are also 2 other additional city shelters that are not fully being utilized by the city. So that's something that can be looked into. All right, I want to pass it on to Mike Shear, who is our Director of Research and Governmental Affairs, who's been working on the environment aspect of our office. So Mike.
Hello, my name is Mike Shear, he, him. As Kenneth said, I'm the Director of Research and Government Affairs here at the Controller's Office. And I just wanted to update you guys on some of the work that we're doing on climate and the environment. You know, one of the big things LA has talked about in recent years is our Green New Deal, which is, it was originally released as, I think, the Sustainable City Plan back in 2015, and has evolved a little bit over the years. And, you know, some aspects of it were very good, others were less good, but, you know, one thing they had is these 97 different milestones where they were tracking progress. But one of the problems with it was the city gave themselves grades on their progress from making progress to milestone exceeded. The worst grade they got was making progress, even if they had missed the milestone. And a lot of the milestones had expired, they couldn't be measured, they couldn't be tracked. So we've been talking with the mayor's office, you know, in the new administration, and we really want to help provide accountability. We want to create a dashboard where everyone can track tangible progress in as the city transitions to you know, more renewable energy, fewer vehicle miles traveled, the things that we really need to do to make a difference in climate. And then another project we're working on has to do with oil wells. You know, LA was one of the biggest oil producing regions in the country 100 years ago. And we're living with that legacy now. And it's not always apparent where the problems are. So about 5,000 oil wells in the city, about 1,900 are either active or unplugged. And we're trying to figure out where the most problematic oil wells are. You know, a lot of these wells are in densely populated areas like Echo Park, South LA, and Wilmington. And so we've been talking to community groups, to the fire department, to the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And we're trying to identify where are the highest priority wells that need to be properly plugged and abandoned immediately in order to protect the people living in those frontline communities. So there you go. Thank you.
Perfect. All right.
Great, thank you so much, Mike. We'll also be highlighting now the work of our Audit Services civil service staff. Audit Services is the team here at the Controller's office that is composed of performance auditors and our fraud, waste, and abuse team. That fraud, waste, and abuse team investigates complaints related to the misuse and abuse of city power and resources. And these complaints we receive from members of the general public and employees of the city of Los Angeles and those who do business with the city. We take those complaints 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in whatever form they come through the door. In order to highlight that, over the last 6 months, we did release a fraud, waste, and abuse annual report that includes summaries of the work of that team. Our performance auditors have also released a follow-up audit of LA's tree trimming and maintenance work. And we highlighted the environmental repercussions of the issues that we spotlighted with that work. As Dinah and Ashley mentioned earlier, we also launched 3 in-depth audits of the LAPD's helicopter team, the interim housing work that is happening throughout the city, and pathways to permanent housing in their state. So please keep an eye out. Those are 3 complex, in-depth audits that require fully immersive dives into these systems. And we launched these audits because of the interest that we heard from residents of LA, and because of the amount of money that the city spends on these kinds of activities. As Kenneth mentioned, our civil service staff is quite small, but we are working to grow it. Kenneth, if you wouldn't mind moving on to this next slide. We are currently working on other audits that you will see publicly announced shortly. They'll be focused on public safety because that tends to be an issue that is top of mind for the people of Los Angeles. And you'll also see a new kind of work product coming out of the Controller's office, something that is akin to a white paper and helps highlight the state of the landscape on a particular issue and makes recommendations. It won't be the product of a full audit, but it will be the product of the expertise that lives within the Controller's office. So keep an eye out for that. Next slide, please. We are also completing a preliminary review of data available within the LA Department of Building and Safety to highlight how well the city is doing in green lighting affordable housing developments throughout the city. We have launched and are carrying out an intense hiring drive for our audit services team. As we mentioned, that's a small team now, but we expect to be able to onboard 4 new professionals for that team. And we are hoping that it will help increase the efficacy of both our performance audit team and our fraud, waste, and abuse team. So keep an eye out for those new team members and the new audits and investigations that will be launched with those resources. We went to City Council and secured funding to launch a consultant-led study on urban oil and gas safety inspections and decommissioning, which is related in part to the work that Mike just described that we're doing on the environment. We also relaunched an updated training program related to our fraud, waste, and abuse team. That's training that goes out to every employee of the city of Los Angeles and helps empower them to be on the lookout for the kind of fraud, waste, and abuse that we all want to spot as early as possible and address as effectively as possible. We are also finalizing an effort to create a standardized approach to follow up on recommendations that we make through our audits. That's a keen priority for this team because we want to make sure that the recommendations that flow out of our audits are actually followed up on by the systems that we audit, and to ensure that the people of LA can see some real change over the long term based on the work that we're doing. And finally, we're revamping a citywide self-assessment to evaluate internal controls related to financial reporting. This is key to ensure that the city's financial health is always as transparent and as accurately presented to the people of LA and to other stakeholders every single year. So we're making sure that the systems that impact that are where they need to be. Next slide, please. And that's it for me. I think you're about to hear from our Chief Deputy Controller, Rick Cole.
Right.
So there are 3 other divisions in the controller's office besides the audit services. Those are financial reporting, accounting operations, and management services. And as Chief Deputy Controller, my responsibility is the parts of the controller's office that really are below the waterline, get very little attention, and yet it is the absolute heartbeat of the city's financial operations. The financial reporting means we're really the city's accountant, responsible for keeping track of $13 billion worth of annual spending. All of that is contained in what's known as the ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, which clocks in at 398 pages. A budget is a projection of what we think we're going to get in the way of revenue and what we think we're going to spend. This document is what is actually taken in and what is spent. Takes about 6 months to prepare and is legally required. All cities must do it. It's independently audited. We work with those auditors to check on the accuracy of all of the numbers that go into those 398 pages. This division of the controller's office also has responsibility for a significant amount of reports that are made to the state, to the federal government, and that are made publicly on a whole range of issues, including all the money that's spent on the voter approved bond issue for affordable housing, Measure HHH. Every penny of that has to be accounted for and reported on publicly. Also, when the city borrows money, that is required to be reported on and accounted for to make sure that it was accurately and appropriately dispersed. And there are other requirements for all of the grants we get from the state and federal government. Those are the responsibilities of this division. We also, in the budget process, are really the first to project what the city will take in the following year. And we released that report in March. The mayor's budget actually assumed about $200 million more in revenue than we did. Part of that is because their timing was based upon some additional information a month later, but also we were more conservative in our assumptions. We hope the mayor's projections are correct, but we will see, depending upon how the economy, both nationally and regionally, plays out in the year ahead. Looking ahead to what we're working on, we're just about to issue a report on $5.6 billion that's not in the general fund, which most people pay attention to, but are in 700 special funds. Interestingly, we found that over 200 of those special funds have not made any expenditures for at least 24 months. There's $72 million in those funds. And we make some recommendations for freeing up and spending some of those dollars. For example, 10 million of them are in housing accounts. And given the magnitude of the housing crisis, we're wondering how come those monies are sitting in an account unutilized. And we are in the midst of a major upgrade to the city's financial management system. It was implemented in 2012. There's been tremendous turnover in our staff. This is really a huge change, make it more user-friendly. And so we're embarking upon training 3,000 users in the new ways of accurately reporting all of the expenditures and tracking them to make sure that we're spending our money as efficiently as we possibly can. We also, as Kenneth mentioned, are tracking the all of the homeless spending, but including Inside Safe. And every year, federal standards come into play, which require us to be more transparent to the public, and we're implementing those. Next slide, Kenneth. The other critical division for day-to-day operations of the city is we're the city's payroll function and its paymaster. So literally every nickel of that $13.2 billion comes through us. Every 2 weeks, we pay 49,000 city staff members, and we issue over the course of a year over 500,000 paychecks to permanent and temporary staff members. We're trying to go green and do as many of those as possible and paperless, including for the W-2 forms at the end of the year. The most important challenge for this division is the implementation of a brand new payroll system. The first phase of that was implemented last year. That's a contract that was signed with a major software company that services more than half of the Fortune 500 and increasingly a number of public employers. We signed that contract back in 2017 for $62 million. It was supposed to go live 2 years ago. We are now $44 million over budget. That is a big concern. We are pushing very hard along with the mayor's office, the technology department, the personnel department, and the city administrative officer to stay on track to switch over to the new system fully in January. But as of today, we're several weeks behind in testing. What's the reasons for that? There are many and complicated, but the most important one, besides the COVID epidemic, which caused a lot of things to get delayed around here, the most important thing is the tremendous staff shortage. We're running at 20%. That's about average for city departments. That means that 1 out of every 5 jobs is going unfilled as we speak today. That means everyone is working harder. Some of them are putting in overtime, and it's slowing everything down, making it hard to free up people to test the new system that we want to implement in January. We're also the city's paymaster. Tens of thousands of checks to city vendors. And it's a source spot. It's a source spot for nonprofits that are providing critical services with city funding. And sometimes they have to wait a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and longer to get paid for the services they're providing. Puts a tremendous strain on our nonprofits to be able to float the expenses that they're doing every day, including on programs like Inside Safe, waiting for the city to get around to paying them. It's also really hard on small businesses. Many of them don't want to do business with the city because they have to wait for getting their checks. We're just the last stop in a very bureaucratic process of processing those checks. We want to be sure that we're not writing checks to people that don't exist, which happened, of course, to some of the COVID relief payments of the federal government and unemployment checks from the state government. But we also want to make sure that we're getting those checks out quickly. So we've embarked, along with the mayor and the council, on a comprehensive analysis of what's holding up the payments. How can we streamline them while keeping accurate procedures in place to make sure that we don't have fraud, we don't have waste, we don't have abuse, we get our checks out in a more timely manner. Last slide, Kenneth. Our smallest division is the one that supports the other three divisions: Audit Services, Financial Reporting, and Accounting Operations, and that's Management Services. One of the things that they work hardest on is addressing this tremendous challenge of vacancies in our department and citywide, and they've had tremendous success. We've been able, just in the last 6 months, to add 33 new staff members and fill some of those gaping holes in our staffing operations. And we have a number, as Sergio just said, in the works for our very understaffed audit division. And we've embarked upon a comprehensive approach under Kenneth, who brings both private sector and community experience. The people who work in City Hall and who work for the city government, they are public servants, and they deserve our respect and our recognition, and they also need to be held accountable, and they also need to be empowered to do their jobs. Sometimes we get tangled up in red tape and bureaucracy. Sometimes we are satisfied with old technology and old ways of doing business. We're in the 21st century, and Kenneth is really determined for our staff to have work-life balance, to work hard for the citizens, to produce outstanding results, and to be proud of what they do. So we embarked upon a comprehensive survey of what's going right and what could be improved in our department. We shared the results with every one of the members of our staff. We solicited their ideas about how we can improve, and we have more than 60 volunteers from our 148 staff members who are working on 4 task forces. One of them is working on how we can improve pride in public service, so people really understand that whether they're an accountant, whether they're a receptionist, whether they're an auditor, how their contribution actually improves the lives of the 4 million Angelenos that depend on our city. Respect and recognition. When people do good work, they deserve positive reinforcement. They deserve to be rewarded and recognized for outstanding work, and we often take that for granted, and that's a mistake if we're going to continue to attract people to local government and have them have fulfilling careers. And speaking of careers, training has really just been slashed in the city. It's a tremendous challenge when you pay people, you ask them often to work overtime, they're short-staffed, they have sometimes old and inefficient technology, and then you're not really investing in sharpening their skills and also helping them advance in their careers. It's no wonder that some of our bright staff go on and give up on local government. So we want to really emphasize career and personal development. People work in the public sector not just for pay or pensions. They work because they want to make a difference, and we want to respect and reward that. We want to encourage that, and we want to sharpen the skills so that they can do a better job for all of you. And the last piece is we don't do very much direct services. We don't pick up the trash. We don't clean the streets. We don't respond to emergencies. But the city could not operate for 24 hours without all of the functions that our small staff perform. And so we're working constantly with every single department in the city, not just the general fund departments, but also the proprietary departments, from the airport and the port and the DWP. Those functions also rely on our accounting at the end of the year. So we want to make sure that we're working well with them. It's one big city, and sometimes the city operates in kind of silos. And I think citizens who are listening in probably understand that they call one department and say, "Oh, that's not our job. Call these people." You call those people. They say, "No, the first department actually does that," and that kind of runaround. we want to make sure that from the standpoint of the citizens of Los Angeles, that you're getting excellent service. And so we want to collaborate and engage both within our 4 divisions in the controller's office, but also with all the 42 departments and the proprietaries, so that you, sitting at home, if you've got a concern about an abandoned oil well in your neighborhood, if you have a concern about broken sidewalks in your neighborhood, if you have a concern about the city's ability to confront homelessness, that we are all working together as one team to be as efficient and as effective, as accountable, and as transparent as we possibly can. So those are the things that Kenneth has made the themes of our first 6 months, and that's what we're working on. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you, Rick. And, gosh, there you go. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to all our staff, to our executive team, and to our civil service team as well, especially our division heads, putting together a lot of the great work that we've all been doing since we took office. I think, being here as city controller has been the best experience, one of the best experiences and the best job that I ever had, because we actually get to do things that we actually love to do and use our skill set to change the systems that we live in the city of LA, whether that is how we're looking at homelessness, public safety, housing, animal services, the environment, and much more. And so I really hope everyone got a good understanding of what we've been working on, what we're trying to do, and just know that this is within the context of us not having all the staff in the world, right? We're actually using our executive team to help with accountability and oversight work because we don't have a large budget for our civil service side. So we are once again thankful for you all for joining us today, and we will keep you all updated, with more as we go. So thank you to everyone for tuning in.